Hi everyone. Today is part 2 of our Dangles Mandala. We are going to put color on our mandala, which is going to be lots of fun. A few of the things we're going to talk about today are how to know where to put your color. There's probably an infinite variety of ways, but I'm going to show you the way that I tend to do it oftentimes, and a few other topics on color, and just some other general art topics as well. And one of the most important is spending quality time together. To remember, this is for relaxation, enjoyment, just to let go. Of course, it's also to be creative, learn something new, but for the most part, it's really to enjoy yourself. When you're enjoying yourself, having a good time, you tend to create work from your heart, which is always, I think, better. Okay, so let's get going. Now, because I can see me doing this for hours, I am probably going to keep it somewhat simple, like on the clouds, making them all pretty much the same color. Now, you can go back in later and add more detail and shadows, highlights, things like that if you like. But just so we can finish this video sometime today, I'll keep it a little more simple than probably I otherwise would. Now what I'm going to do on this image is try to keep all the colors kind of realistic, like the clouds to me are anywhere from white to a lighter blue. Since we're working with a white background, I don't want to make the clouds white. I want to make them some shade of blue. So while they will appear to be a little darker probably than your average cloud, you need to be able to see them. And since my vision of this image is a happy, pretty, bright day, I don't want to make them like a deeper purple or a dark, dark blue because this is a bright, sunny day in my imaginary world. But now, just because I'm keeping this somewhat realistic doesn't mean that every color has to be perfect. It doesn't. Like my purple cone flower is probably darker. No, I'm sure it's darker than the real ones, but it's no big deal, okay? So use what colors you have and don't worry about it. And something else worth mentioning is that this is a mandala. It is my idea of things that I love. So while I say I'm keeping the colors realistic, the whole thing is, from my imagination. So what's real? So if you're creating something like this, be free, do what you want, to have a good time. Now, if we were creating something that was photorealistic or something along that nature, I wouldn't be saying this, but we're not. We're creating something from our heart, so let your heart kind of guide you in this. Something else I should mention, which I mention in just about every video that I make when I'm using marker, should probably do it in pencil first. Even if it's just roughed in a little. Because if you take a look at the cloud on the left upper section, you'll see where my black marker line goes into the cloud. And ideally, I would not want that there. But that is going to be what happens if you don't use a pencil. But now, also having said that, if you're just creating something for fun, for relaxation, it doesn't really matter. But if you're creating it as something that you want to give away or hang on your wall or, put on a greeting card or something, then that is where you would probably want to do it in pencil first. Okay? Okay. Now, where I have my sun, I don't want to put, ideally, the same color right next to it. Unless, I'm deliberately creating everything in chunks of the same color, which I'm not. You want to space out your colors so it kind of blends in and pops everywhere. So, like the sun down in the bottom, and then I have a star on the top, and the moon over to the right. You want to space out your colors so your eye will travel around and around. Okay? All right. When you use colors in this way, it creates movement, and movement creates interest. So it's a wonderful tool to use. Scatter or stagger your colors to create that movement. And one of the good things that happens from this is the viewer will tend to go around and around, so they end up seeing or focusing, noticing the vast majority, if not all, of your image. Now, when you have an image like this, it's really quite busy. There's little things everywhere, and that can make it kind of hard to see the whole image. But doing something like this with the color really does help with that. Now, while we're on the topic of color, I would like to talk about one of the other things I do, which is if I know that something is going to be a certain color, I tend to do those first, at least in an area that I'm working in, because I know I'm going to want those that color. Like the sun, for instance, I knew I wanted it yellow. The cloud, I knew I wanted it blue. And when you do those first, then you can go back in and fill in the rest of your image with colors that tend to make your image move and colors that you want that say you need in that area. It just makes the process much easier, a little more intuitive as well. And probably the reason I came up with this method is because I remember times when I would sit for what seemed like forever trying to make up my mind on what color I wanted to make something. And during that process, it dawned on me, well, if I make the colors or go ahead and put down the colors that I know for sure, it will make the process easier. And it really does work. Okay, carrying on. Okay, so let's talk about the main focal point for just a minute. The very center of your mandala is, I would consider, the main focal point. It's the theme. And for me, I put a heart there with little rays coming out from around it. And so for me, I wanted to put things that I love. And being outside made it a very easy choice, what I wanted to create. Just look around me. And, there's butterflies, dragonflies, flowers, the sun, clouds, etc., all kinds of plant life. And I love all of that. So it made it a very easy composition for me. But the center, I would think, would be the main idea that you are trying to get across. So it could be anything that you want. Like I mentioned in the prior video, whatever it is that you want, like peace, you could put the word peace in there and then surround it at the end of your dangles with your charms that are related to peace in some fashion. And think of the dangles as kind of like extensions off of your main theme. And then when you get to the charms part, which is typically the very end, then you create that little spark, whatever that spark may be. And in this case, it is, say, the butterfly. I love butterflies. So it's a very easy transition, the heart to the butterfly. And you can do that with anything. You could have a person in the center, and then all the surrounding dangles and charms would be things that are in that person's personality, where they live, what you feel about them. There's all kinds. This is just, I think, a very awesome project because it is so creative, and at the same time, it can be ultimately personal all the way to something that's generic. So it's really a fun project. Like in the first video when I was talking about drawing it, how I wanted to put leaves, vines, that sort of thing, but I wanted to create them differently. I didn't want them all to be the same. And I'm doing the same thing with the green color. I'm trying to keep a limited palette so it won't take all night to do this, but I'm still using different variations of green, like from an olive green to a blue green, etc. which is something that adds interest as well. It creates variety, which makes your eye travel. So, unless you are trying to have, a limited palette, I would put a variety of the same types of color in there, staggered, so your eye will travel more than it otherwise would. Okay, let's talk about dark colors for a second. Some dark colors will do fine just filling in the whole thing. Some you probably would want to use them more as an outline or at least leave some of the white space showing because some of the dark colors, like in this case, what I'm really referring to is the vine that's on the top left, the one that has the berries. I used a very dark green and I didn't want it to come out looking super dark or, you know, being the part that is all you see because it's so bold. So what I did is I went in and kind of outlined it and left some of the white showing through. So while it's still dark, it also has a lot of the white, which helps reduce that some. Okay? All right. Another thing I wanted to mention is that, yes, this is a bright sunny day for me. However, I do love rain and I love thunderstorms. So, in the bottom right, I did put my lightning bolt and I do have raindrops. So, yes, it's a sunny day, but I'm having a moment of a thunderstorm. Okay? Yeah. All right. And another thing to mention is if you see this wiggling, it's because my cat keeps bouncing on the picnic table, which makes it wiggle. Also, the wind keeps blowing and I keep hearing the birds. I don't know if you can hear them. The birds are lovely, but if the wind is coming through, sorry about that. Okay, if you like this video, I would really appreciate it if you give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. I would love it. And also, please hit the bell notification to be notified when I post future videos. Okay, back to the project. Now, let's go on to the dangles. The part that's between the center and the very tip of the charms. Your dangles can be used for just supporting your charms, or they can be used to decorate in all kinds of ways. You can have meaning to them if you like. What I did on this one, not all, but most of them, I just put little beads or different shapes so I could have a balance from nature and things that were geometric. I wanted that balance there just to be more playful. But you can use those. I think you've seen probably some of my work where I have letters that spell out a word on them. There's just a wide variety of things you can do. Another really good thing to do with the dangle lines themselves, which I've done a few different times on here, is say if you have a flying thing like an insect, bird, something like that at the end, which is your charm, I like to wrap around the pathway that they've taken along the dangle line. And also on the right side, just about in the center, but not quite, you see a light blue swirl. That light blue swirl is actually a breeze. It wouldn't have fit visually to make it go around. So I made it go along the dangle line itself. So there's a lot of things you can do with the dangles. Well, also you can see like on the flower, that's where I put the leaves. There's lots of different things. So you can keep it in with a theme or you could just make more of a generic enhancement, like shapes, hearts, things like that. They all look good on dangles. Now, depending on your project, I'm sure there are times when you would probably want a very simple dangle line. But you don't want to totally ignore your dangle lines either. Okay? They they have a purpose, and it is a supporting purpose, but it can actually be a main part of your image that holds very important things. For example, wedding rings or birth dates, just to name a few. Okay, so let's recap just a little bit. On the dangle mandala, you have the center section, and to me, the center section is the main theme of your overall image. That's what I would put there. Then you have your dangle lines, and then you have at the very ends the charms. You can also put charms partway down the dangle lines, or not even attached to a dangle line if you wish. But those are the three main sections: the center, the dangle line, and then the charms. And you can, oh geez, the ideas are probably infinite or almost infinite, what you can do with this. It's a lot of fun. Enjoy the process. It's very rewarding. And I also think that it could be really good, kind of a art therapy. If you're working through stress, things like that. I think it would be great. Okay, well, anyway, I don't want to start rambling. So now that we've gone over this all, I hope you've enjoyed it and gotten some benefit out of this. And if you create any, I would love to see them. So happy creating. Have a wonderful day. Much love, Olivia.